買い物ですね。お任せください。
ごめんねシュウさん。モツに頼むつもりだったんだけど、急にどっか行っちゃって。
わかります。いなくていい時はいるくせに、肝心な時には姿が見えない。役立たずとはまさにあの男のこと。
Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we have another anime line of the day, and our line is going to be that guy is the epitome of useless. He's always here when you don't need him, and always goes off when something important's going on. Which in Japanese, as you just heard, is going to be Inakute ii toki wa iru kuse ni, kanjin na toki ni wa sugata ga mienai, Yakutatazu to wa masa ni ano otoko no koto.
いなくていい時はいるくせに、肝心な時には姿が見えない。役立たずとはまさにあの男のこと。
So this line right here is actually going to be composed of two sentences. The first one is where you're like saying the reason for why he's useless, then the second one is just saying he's useless. But before we jump into the breakdown, we're going to need to cover some vocabulary words. Luckily, we have a pretty short list, just 4 terms, and even then probably half or more words that are very common. The first one is going to be the noun kanjin, which is going to translate to basically essential or crucial. This can also be used as a na adjective, like a lot of nouns can be, and that's what we're going to be using in the sentence, so get ready for that, I suppose. Our next word is going to be another noun, sugata, which is just going to translate to basically appearance or figure. Coming in after that is our verb word, mieru, which is basically just going to translate to be seen, to be in sight. And last but not least, we have an adjective of sorts, a adjective that's used with the particle no, Yakutatazu, which is basically just going to be the more common word yakutatsu, which is going to translate to be useful or to be helpful, but it's in its zu form here basically, and it's used as an adjective instead of a verb. So yeah, another variation of that yakunitatsu is probably the more common version. It's a very common term to just mean to be useful. Let's replay the first sentence in this line that we're going to cover right now, just to hear it again.
いなくていい時はいるくせに、肝心な時には姿が見えない。
Alright, いなくていい時はいるくせに、肝心な時には姿が見えない. Let's break this down word by word. First up, we have the verb iru, which is basically just going to mean to be, basically to be present. It's going to be conjugating to its negative nai form, so inai means to not be present, to not be here, not be there. We're going to then in turn conjugate the negative nai form of it into basically the connective form, so we drop the e at the end of inai, replace it with the ku, then put on te as well. So inakute is going to mean not there, but it's in its connective form, so we can continue on with the statement and connect it to that. And how we're going to do that in this sentence is just basically following up with the e adjective e, which means basically good or fine or it's okay. So basically inakute e is going to be basically it's okay to not be there. This is a clause that we're going to be using to modify the noun right after it, which is toki, which just means time basically. So inakute ii toki is basically times when it's okay to not be there. And we're going to mark that clause right there, or that noun being modified by the clause, as the topic. So basically when it comes to times when it's okay to not be there, and now we continue on with the sentence, and we just have now basically the dictionary form, the regular default form of the verb iru, which again means to be there, be here, to be present. And yeah, so it's just iru. And so inakute ii toki wa iru is basically just saying when it comes to times when it's okay to not be there, he's there. And the he there is already implied, even though we don't explicitly state it in the sentence, because this is basically part of a longer conversation and he's already been established. And he, the person that they're talking about, has already been established as basically the person they're talking about. However, we still don't end the sentence here. We're going to be using the grammar pattern that is kuseni, which is basically saying even though, but there's a very strong connotation of this being like a critical assessment of someone. So like that'll basically translate to even though he's here when you don't need him to be there. And that's basically acting as a conjunction. So we've only covered the first half of the sentence.
いなくていい時はいるくせに、
We're going to come in now with another clause acting as the second half.
肝心な時には姿が見えない。
And we're going to start that second half off with the no adjective kanjin, which again means crucial, essential, important. We're going to have a na right after it because it's a na adjective and we're using it to modify or describe a noun, which again is going to be the word toki. So time, so critical times, crucial times, important times. We have the combined usage of the particle ni and wa here just to mark those critical, crucial times as the topic. And then we have this pretty common phrasing of sugata ga mienai. This is basically just the word sugata, which means figure or appearance. We have the ga marking it as the subject, and mieru, which means to be seen, to be in sight in its negative form. So appearance is not in sight. It's a weird way of saying that wording, I guess, if you translate it literally, but this is a very common phrasing in Japanese, and basically it'll just naturally translate to not here, you can't find him anywhere, he's nowhere to be seen. And that right there is going to cover the first sentence in this line. Inakute ii toki wa iru kuse ni, kanjin na toki ni wa sugata ga mienai.
いなくていい時はいるくせに肝心な時には姿が見えない役立たずとはまさにあの男のこと
And that'll translate to something like, he's always here when you don't need him, but goes off somewhere when something important comes up. And now we're going to go into the second sentence of the line. It's a pretty straightforward sentence, and it's just basically the clincher to this whole point that he's trying to convey. Yakutatazu to wa masa ni ano otoko no koto.
役立たずとはまさにあの男のこと
And that literally translated is going to be basically, that man truly is the definition of useless. In our natural translation, we'll probably just turn that into something like, he's the epitome of useless. So let's break that down. First up, we have our last vocabulary word in our list, yakutatazu, which is going to translate to basically useless. Like I explained earlier, it's basically just the zu form of the verb yakutatsu, which is going to mean to be useful. There's a much more common version of that, which is yakunitatsu, which means to be helpful. And so yeah, the zu form is basically just turning into a negative. And here yakutatazu is going to be an adjective, and we're going to be marking it with the particles to and wa. And toa is a common particle conjunction or combination, I guess you would say, and it's basically just used to indicate that something, a word or a phrase, is being defined. Like if you wanted to ask somebody what the definition of something was, you would just say that word and then toa, and they'll be like, what does this mean, or what's the definition of this? And so in this case, he's not really asking the definition, he's stating it. So he's saying yakutatazu to wa, and he's basically saying the definition of useless, or the epitome of useless, is masa ni, and this is an adverb phrase that basically means truly, certainly. Then we have the demonstrative adjective ano, which means that, and it's going to be modifying the noun right after it, of course, which is going to be otoko, which just translates to man or guy. Then that is going to be in turn a noun of a noun modification with just the word koto. We use koto with people's names or words like otoko when we basically just want to stress kind of their person or their character or their entity. And so yeah, in this case, that's what's going on here. And that is actually going to end the sentence right there. Yakutatazu to wa masa ni ano otoko no koto.
役立たずとはまさにあの男のこと
The definition of useless is truly that man, or more naturally, he's the epitome of useless. So let's combine both sentences of the line. Inakute ii toki wa iru kuse ni, kanjin na toki ni wa sugata ga mienai, yakutatazu to wa masa ni ano otoko no koto. That's going to translate to, he's always here when you don't need him, but goes off somewhere when something important comes up. He's the epitome of uselessness.
買い物ですねお任せください
ごめんねシュウさん。モツに頼むつもりだったんだけど、急にどっか行っちゃって。
わかりますいなくていい時はいるくせに肝心な時には姿が見えない役立たずとはまさにあの男のこと
Alrighty, so that's going to wrap it up for this anime line of the day. Before we end it, let's review the grammar patterns that we came across with this line. Just honestly, I would say a decent amount chunked into one sentence, the first sentence especially. We had the negative nai form of the existential verb iru. It was then turned into the connective te form by becoming inakute. We had a clause modifying a noun, or you could kind of consider that just the usage of the grammar pattern that is toki to mean time or when. We had the kuse ni grammar pattern, which means even though, but there's a strong nuance of like, this is a critical judgment of someone, or it portrays some contempt in your words. That's probably the most difficult grammar pattern in this line. We had toki again. We had The common phrase sugata ga mieru, which isn't too much a grammar pattern, but just a good thing to point out there because it's so common. We had technically the zu form with Yakutatazu, which is kind of its own established word. We had the towa, which is the particle used to mark a definition of something, and we had the no koto, which is kind of, I guess, a grammar pattern as well. So yeah, a decent amount of grammar patterns, or if you don't even want to qualify them as grammar patterns, still a lot of nuances of common things that happens in the Japanese language. So this is a helpful line, and of course it's also a pretty good structure. You can probably see how this is easily modifiable to say something else, like he's the definition of something else, of a nice person, he's the epitome of a lazy person, and then basically you say the first line, which is like the justification of the reason why, and then you can end it with that clincher of blank to wa masa ni ano otoko no koto.
買い物ですね。お任せください。
ごめんねシュウさん。モツに頼むつもりだったんだけど急にどっか行っちゃって。
わかります。いなくていい時はいるくせに肝心な時には姿が見えない。役立たずとはまさにあの男のこと。
Alright, that's gonna wrap it up for this episode of Anime Line of the Day. Remember, if there were grammar patterns mentioned for this line, they'll be mentioned in the description or the pinned comment below with links to the individual lessons on them. You can also probably find them in the playlist of our complete grammar video series shown on the screen right here alongside our anime playlist. And last but not least, don't forget to try to translate the bonus line we provided. Leave your translation in a comment below. Check out our Patreon, like the video, and subscribe. With all that said and done, see you next time.